Imagine being responsible for an entire nation and making a decision so bad that people are still talking about it thousands of years later. Not for a few months, not for a few years, for millennia. That's not a mistake. That's a monument to bad decision-making. It's like being asked to run a company for a couple of weeks and somehow creating a disaster so legendary that future generations keep using it as the example. And this is where things start getting uncomfortable. Israel had just witnessed the impossible. The sea opened, the army vanished, the slaves walked free. The impossible became yesterday's news. Freedom had arrived, instructions had not, and that was slowly becoming everyone's problem. Moses, the leader, had gone up a mountain, which wasn't unusual. Moses did unusual things all the time. At this point, people probably expected him to return from random mountains with important announcements. At first, nobody worried. A day passed. Then another. Then another. Still no Moses. The crowd remained patient. For a while. Then came more days, and more waiting, and more uncertainty, which is where human beings tend to become creative. Not productive creative, problem-creating creative. Questions started spreading through the camp. Where was Moses? What was taking so long? Was he coming back? And if he wasn't, what exactly was Plan B? The problem? Nobody remembered creating a Plan B. The sea had opened. The crowd's patience remained firmly closed, and every day Moses remained on that mountain. The pressure below continued to grow. People wanted direction. People wanted certainty. People wanted answers, mostly because nobody had any. Thousands of people were now standing in the wilderness with unlimited free time and absolutely no verified information, which has never improved a situation in human history. Rumors appeared, speculation appeared, confidence appeared, evidence did not. Soon everyone started looking toward one man, Aaron, which was unfortunate, because Aaron wasn't the leader, not really. He was the assistant, the spokesman, the trusted second in command, the man standing next to leadership, not the man expected to replace it. Moses climbed a mountain. Aaron inherited a countdown. Nobody knew it yet. There is a massive difference between helping make decisions and suddenly becoming the person expected to have all of them. But crowds are not famous for respecting organizational charts. As concern grew, more people approached Aaron, then more, then even more. Every conversation carried pressure. Every question carried expectations. Do something, say something, fix something. The crowd wanted answers. Aaron wanted answers too. Unfortunately, nobody was asking him. And that created a very specific kind of problem. Aaron wasn't facing a rebellion, not yet. He wasn't facing an invasion. He wasn't facing a disaster. He was facing something far more dangerous, a nervous crowd with too much time to think. Because most catastrophes don't begin with evil plans. They begin with pressure, with uncertainty, with people becoming desperate for quick solutions. And Aaron was about to learn a lesson that leaders have been learning ever since. Being second in command is a wonderful position, all the influence, half the blame, until the leader disappears. Then the math changes very quickly. Because the longer Moses remained on that mountain, the more the crowd demanded certainty. And very soon, they were going to demand it from Aaron. The strange part? The calf wasn't the problem. Not yet. In fact, at this point, the calf didn't even exist. The real problem was already growing long before any gold was collected. It was growing inside the crowd, and it was growing inside Aaron, because pressure has a way of changing people. Especially when thousands of people are applying it at the same time. The longer Moses remained on the mountain, the more questions turned into demands. People stopped asking what was happening. They started asking what Aaron was going to do about it. Which sounds reasonable, until you're the one being asked. Aaron wasn't a tyrant. He wasn't a rebel. He wasn't secretly planning a takeover. If anything, Aaron had the opposite problem. He wanted everyone to be happy. Which sounds like a wonderful quality, right up until leadership becomes involved. Because leadership occasionally requires disappointing people. Sometimes lots of people. Sometimes all of them. And Aaron was about to discover that crowds rarely applaud that strategy. Every day brought more pressure, more complaints, more uncertainty, more expectations. The people wanted direction. The people wanted certainty. The people wanted immediate results, which is understandable. Human beings generally prefer answers today over answers eventually, even when the eventual answers are better. The situation started feeling less like a nation in the wilderness and more like a customer service desk during a system outage. Everyone had questions. Nobody had information. Everybody expected solutions anyway. Aaron found himself trapped in the middle. People kept approaching him. Groups formed. Conversations multiplied. Opinions spread. And every opinion somehow arrived at the same conclusion. Aaron needed to do something, anything, now. The pressure wasn't slowing down, it was accelerating. And pressure creates a dangerous illusion. It makes action feel wiser than patience, even when patience is exactly what's needed. The crowd looked at silence and saw weakness. The crowd looked at waiting and saw failure. The crowd looked at uncertainty and decided uncertainty itself was the enemy. People often mistake patience for weakness. Crowds do it even faster. Meanwhile, Aaron kept facing the same problem. He didn't know where Moses was. He didn't know when Moses was returning. He didn't know what was happening on the mountain. The crowd expected answers. Aaron was still looking for them, an unfortunate mismatch. And this is where a critical moment arrives, because leadership usually faces a choice: hold the line or move the line. Aaron could have resisted the pressure. He could have told the people to wait. He could have accepted their frustration. He could have risked becoming unpopular. Instead, he began negotiating with the pressure, which sounds harmless. It wasn't, because pressure is very much like a stray camel. Feed it once, and it keeps coming back. The crowd noticed immediately. The resistance was weakening. The certainty was disappearing. The door was opening. And once a crowd realizes it can push, it rarely pushes less. It usually pushes more. Soon the pressure became stronger. The demands became louder. The expectations became heavier. Aaron wasn't losing a debate. He was losing control of the conversation. And that matters because most disasters don't begin when people choose the worst option. They begin when people stop defending the right one. The problem wasn't gold. The problem wasn't a statue. The problem wasn't even the crowd. The problem was fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of disappointment. Fear of saying no. And fear has a remarkable ability to disguise itself as compromise. Aaron thought he was keeping the peace. The crowd thought they were finding solutions. Neither realized they were moving toward the same cliff. And this is where the story flips. Hard. And yes, it gets messy fast. At this point, the pressure had been building for days. Questions became demands. Demands became expectations. Expectations became momentum. And momentum has a dangerous habit. Once it starts rolling downhill, it rarely asks for directions. The crowd wanted answers. Immediate answers. Visible answers. Preferably answers they could point at. Aaron wanted peace. Immediate peace. Visible peace. Preferably peace that would stop people from asking questions. This was not a good combination, because when panic meets compromise, bad ideas suddenly start sounding reasonable. The idea appeared. The suggestions spread. The pressure increased. And then came the moment that changed everything. Aaron gave in. Not all at once. That is rarely how disasters work. Most disasters arrive one compromise at a time, one concession, one shortcut, one attempt to avoid conflict, then another, and another. Pressure, compromise, approval, more compromise, more approval, more pressure. The cycle practically built itself, and nobody seemed interested in stopping it, which was unfortunate, because somebody probably should have. It's a little like trying to put out a fire with gasoline because people are tired of waiting for water. Technically, something is happening. The problem is what happens next. Soon, gold started appearing. Jewelry, valuable possessions, personal treasures. The crowd handed them over. Aaron accepted them. And for a brief moment, there was still time to stop. There is almost always a moment like that. A final exit. A last opportunity. A chance to say, "This is a terrible idea." Nobody took it. Instead, the process continued. And the further it went, the harder it became to reverse, because people become strangely committed to bad ideas once they've invested something in them. Time, effort, money, gold. Human nature has remained remarkably consistent. Eventually, the famous calf appeared. The calf, the title character, the symbol everybody remembers, the object that would become one of the most famous mistakes in biblical history. And the truly remarkable part: nobody woke up that morning planning to create a national disaster. Nobody gathered their friends and announced, "Today seems like a great day to make history for all the wrong reasons." Most catastrophes don't begin with evil intentions. They begin with people trying to solve the wrong problem. Aaron wasn't trying to create chaos. He was trying to calm the crowd. The crowd wasn't trying to destroy the nation. They were trying to remove uncertainty. Everybody believed they were solving a problem, and somehow they managed to create a much larger one, which happens more often than most people would like to admit. The celebration began. The energy spread. Excitement replaced anxiety, at least temporarily. People felt relieved. People felt united. People felt certain again. And certainty can feel wonderful, even when it's attached to something completely foolish. The nation had barely learned how to live in freedom, and was already building replacement problems. The crowd saw a solution. Aaron saw a solution. Reality strongly disagreed, because the calf was never just a statue. It was a symptom of fear, a symptom of impatience, a symptom of what happens when leadership starts following the crowd instead of guiding it. And unfortunately, the story was about to become much harder to explain, because somebody was coming down the mountain. And this is where things get awkward. And now comes the scene everybody remembers. While the camp celebrated below, Moses was coming down the mountain. After all the waiting, after all the uncertainty, after all the pressure, the leader was finally returning, which should have solved everything. Instead, it was about to expose everything. Because while Moses had been receiving instructions from God, the nation had been conducting its own experiment, without supervision, without direction, and with surprisingly high confidence. As Moses approached the camp, something felt wrong. The sounds were wrong, the atmosphere was wrong, the entire situation felt wrong. This was not the sound of patience. This was not the sound of discipline. This was definitely not the sound of people quietly waiting. And then he saw it. The crowd, the celebration, the calf, which was probably not on his list of expected outcomes that morning. Moses had been gone for a while. Apparently that was all the time required. He looked at the people, then at the calf, then at Aaron, then back at the calf, because some situations deserve a second look. This was one of them. The crowd had spent days convincing themselves everything was under control. Reality disagreed. Strongly. Reality had arrived. Reality was not impressed. Reality rarely is. In a single moment, everything changed. The celebration stopped feeling like a victory. The confidence stopped feeling like confidence. The solution stopped looking like a solution. And suddenly, everyone found themselves standing much closer to a disaster than they realized. The people wanted certainty. They got chaos. The people wanted answers. They got consequences. The people wanted something to follow. Now, they had something to explain, which is usually the harder assignment. The calf was destroyed. The celebration ended. The illusion collapsed, and reality took over the meeting. No one voted for that outcome. It happened anyway. Now attention turned toward Aaron, which was unfortunate, because Moses wanted answers, actual answers, specific answers, the kind connected to reality. Aaron's situation offered very few of them. What happened next became one of the most famous explanations in biblical history, and one of the least convincing. Aaron explained that the people gave him gold. Fair enough, the gold went into the fire, still reasonable. And then, somehow, the calf came out. That was the explanation. That was the defense. That was the strategy. Which sounds less like an explanation, and more like a man discovering his explanation while speaking. It's the ancient equivalent of saying, "I clicked a few buttons, and somehow the entire system deleted itself." Technically, words were used, confidence was displayed. Information remained limited, which is impressive in its own way. Moses understood something immediately. The calf did not appear by accident. The disaster did not appear by accident. The pressure had been real. The fear had been real. The decisions had been real too. And decisions have a habit of surviving long after excuses arrive. The crowd had wanted certainty. Aaron had wanted peace. Both achieved exactly the opposite. And this is where the title finally starts making sense, because the story was never really about gold. It was never really about a statue, and it was never really about a calf. The calf was the result. The real story happened before it. The pressure, the fear, the compromise. The silence. The moment leadership stopped leading and started reacting, because the calf was built in a day. But the damage had already started long before the fire was lit, and the lesson was only becoming clearer. So no, this was never just a story about a calf. The calf gets the attention, the calf gets the artwork, the calf gets remembered. But the calf was never the beginning of the story. It was the ending of a process that started much earlier, long before the gold, long before the fire, long before the statue appeared. The real story began with pressure, then came uncertainty, then fear, then compromise, then more compromise, then even more compromise, and eventually, a calf. Which is how many disasters work, not with one enormous decision, but with a series of smaller decisions that quietly stack on top of each other until nobody remembers where the problem actually started. Looking back, Aaron's greatest mistake wasn't shaping the gold. The gold was simply visible. The real mistake happened earlier. Aaron stopped leading and started reacting. At first, that sounds like a small distinction. It isn't. Leadership asks, what is right? Pressure asks, what is popular? Leadership asks, what is necessary? Pressure asks, what is immediate? And those two conversations rarely end in the same place. Aaron faced a crowd that wanted certainty, fast certainty, visible certainty. The kind of certainty people can point at and say, there, problem solved. The problem? Reality does not care how quickly people want answers. Reality operates on a completely different schedule, one that has frustrated human beings for a very long time. The crowd wanted peace. Their choices created chaos. Aaron wanted approval. His decisions created consequences. Nobody got what they wanted, which is impressive, considering how determined everyone was. The strange part is that this story remains surprisingly familiar, because the setting changes, the clothing changes, the technology changes. Human nature rarely does. People still dislike uncertainty. People still prefer immediate answers. People still confuse movement with progress. And pressure still has an extraordinary ability to make bad ideas look reasonable, especially when enough people agree with them. A crowd can make almost any idea feel safe, for a while. That was the lesson hidden behind the calf. The statue wasn't the disease, it was the symptom, the visible result of invisible problems. Fear, impatience, compromise, the slow replacement of leadership with reaction. Because once leaders start following crowds, crowds eventually start leading leaders. That arrangement rarely ends well. The calf was built in a day. The damage lasted much longer, and that's why this story survived thousands of years. Not because of the gold, not because of the statue, not even because of the mistake itself, but because every generation recognizes the pattern. Pressure arrives, fear grows, compromise follows, and suddenly, people find themselves somewhere they never intended to go. Aaron didn't break the nation when he shaped the gold. He broke it when he stopped leading and started reacting. And that is the part of the story that matters most, because the easiest thing in the world is building something people want. The harder thing is standing in front of a crowd and saying no. And that difference changed the course of an entire nation, all because of one calf. Which Bible story should we simplify next?